Grit keeps me going when the news is good and when the news isn't so good. Grit is what drives me because of our why, because of the why. The why is George. We're trying something, we're trying. Because if you don't try, you're never going to get where you want to get to. If you do try, and you try hard enough, and you keep trying, then you've got a chance of getting there. George was born 2nd of May 21, 32 weeks. He was 1 kilogram when he was born. He was very small. He likes going out for walks, he likes going on his bike, he likes going to the park, going on the swings and the slides. But he's the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me in my life. I see myself in him, I see my dad in him. He's cheeky, which I love. He seems to be a very loving, gentle, kind little boy. I noticed George wasn't on the normal path, really, when we had some blood results come back from St Mary's Hospital, and it showed that he had a very high bilirubin level. And on the Monday morning, woke up and went out for a morning walk, and rather than turning right and walking to the park, we looked at George and realised he was in fact turning yellow, so we turned left and went to St Mary's Hospital, where he was admitted, and we had about 6 weeks of in and out of hospital with tests until we were sent down to King's Hospital to go and look at his liver. You're desperately trying to find the answer. It's like you want somebody to tell you it's going to be okay. That's where we kind of first came into contact with Professor Anil Dhawan, and the care we had down there was simply first class.
George came to our attention just over 2 years now, when he came to us with a history of jaundice from a local hospital, which is not an uncommon thing, and we thought, okay, it will go away. So we started investigating, and as the things unfolded, we found something very, very rare, very, very difficult to manage.
The 3rd of August is a key date that I'll never forget, and that's when George was diagnosed with rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a very rare childhood cancer. George had several other kind of clues that there may be something underlying causing this condition, and one of the doctors in particular, Sharon Jeter, decided that George would benefit from having this R14 whole genome sequence testing.
What made me consider testing for a genetic condition with George is that about 6 months after I met him, the growth still wasn't really catching up. On top of that, the kidneys, there still remained calcium within the kidneys. So a lot of the children, when they go through fussy phases of eating, you expect that, you know, they can have dips in their growth. But George's did slightly persist, again a little bit differently, I would say. And at that point, you start to think of a genetic diagnosis. The R14 is a very comprehensive test, and actually when we have cases where we're getting a lot of different symptoms together, but we can't quite piece them together, it really is this, you know, this whole genome sequencing is how we get answers.
I guess the moment really was when the doctors came back to give us the news of the R14 test, and it wasn't just a doctor or 2 doctors, there was about 10 doctors. And in my experiences in life, that generally means that there's something big there's some bigger news about to happen.
A normal cell in the human body has 46 chromosomes, and we looked at the blood cells, and there is a high percentage of cells who have 48 chromosomes, or 52, or 44, completely wrong number of chromosomes in a cell, which, if that is present in your whole body, is not a viable condition. You will not even reach birth. You will end in a miscarriage. But still, on a cellular level, you know, every tissue in this body will have the tendency, when it divides, to produce cells with an abnormal number of chromosomes, and those cells often will not function normally.
The word variegated in the middle, another unusual word, means that we get different chromosome abnormalities. So there are some children where they've got the same chromosome problem in every cell in their body, but in MVA, because of the actual underlying biology of it, it means that children could be a mix of cells. So that's captured both in Mosaic and in variegated.
For children with MVA, we have noted, even though it's super rare, there's an increased chance of developing certain cancers. So not always in the liver, but what we call embryonal cancers, which basically means cancers that start from cells, are embryonal cells, that occur in children. So there's a very rare kidney tumour called Wilms tumour that is more common in children with MVA. The tumour that George had, a rhabdomyosarcoma, occurred in the liver, can occur other places in the body as well. When a cancer occurs, it's because cells start to divide uncontrollably. And our genetic information is really important for the checks and balances. Our cells need to divide because we need more skin cells, we need more cells in our gut, but they need to know when to stop dividing as well, and that's when a cancer occurs. So it's probably something to do with the fact that the alterations in the number of chromosomes and the genetic information stops the cells from having the normal signals to start and then stop dividing in a normal way.
We were always told that once we got a diagnosis, everything would be okay because we'd know the diagnosis and we could then treat it. People don't tell you that if you get a diagnosis where there is no treatment available, there's not really a lot you can do other than keep your fingers crossed. And that was the diagnosis we got. MVA is so rare. The genetic team here in London had never seen a child with MVA. I'd love to meet somebody who was 35 with the same MVA condition as George. And for them to turn around and say, we're 35, we've got here, you know, you can do it. The one word that keeps coming to my mind is grit. You have a lot of people who tell you it's going to be difficult, it can't be done, money should be spent looking after where money can impact the most people. But more and more in today's society, people are having breakthroughs with individualised, personalised medicine. I can't think of anything better to do with my life than try and make my son's life longer and better. And if I can do that by 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%, then that's kind of what any parent I think would want. I guess we had a natural distraction, which was George had cancer. So we kind of parked the MVA piece because that wasn't the thing that was going to kill him. The thing that was going to potentially kill him was his cancer. That's what our focus was for the next 9 months, getting him through the cancer, reducing the tumour through chemo, and then having it resected.
The problem was that there is no set protocol for management. So in this situation, what you do is you look at, who else has treated similar patient in the past. So our net was very wide. So I happen to know a lot of people who are really world experts in liver disease in children, and that they go from Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere. So South Korea, Taiwan, coming back to India down, and then Japan, then Europe, North America. And there are a lot of conflicting data. So somebody say do a transplant, somebody don't do this, do that. So obviously the family, Jonathan and Rachel, wanted what's the best possible for George. Transplant is easier option for us, okay? But it's a lifelong, it's another disease. So it's not a cure, okay? Because you have to take lifelong medication. And in his case, he's predisposed to problems. So to avoid immunosuppression was a big bonus for us.
In order to get it out, we really needed to see signs that the tumour was shrinking. And we needed to kind of have a positive spin on all of this and a positive vibe to say, this is possible. And the people who were really confident in doing that and giving us that level of confidence were the guys in France. So myself and Anil went over to France to go and meet with the team in France. And I think going over there and getting their input to how a solution could be put together for George was one of the most important steps we made in this whole journey for him.
So that's where the nanoknife or IRE comes into discussion. It means is you produce a high voltage electricity that it damages the tissue there around it, but it just damages the cells, it doesn't damage the outside structure. So that's a kind of a uniqueness about this treatment. Professor Heaton and his team were able to carve out all of the tumor with clean margin left behind, because that's what we need, resection-free margin, what we call it.
Ready? Ring the bell 3 times well, it's told to clearly say, my treatment's done, this course is run, and I am on my way.
For the last sort of 6 months or so, 9 months, George has been relatively settled, which means that we go to Great Ormond Street every 3 months for our scans. We go to King's about the same frequency for liver scans. We have regular, meaning every couple of weeks, we'll do blood tests just to check his bloods are okay because his kidneys are a problem. It just takes time, effort and sort of dedication to make sure it happens.
One of the most difficult things I've done in my paediatric training is not able to give families answers. George's case has hope for those people who've not got answers, the undiagnosables, to now get a diagnosis. And that's the first part of getting a treatment.
The MVA Society is the only charity in the world focused on MVA, it's Mosaic Variegated Aneuploidy syndrome. By hook or by crook, we're going to find a treatment. That's the plan in the next 3 years. Next thing up is 26.2 very painful miles. I started the MVA Society because when I was Googling MVA online, there was a definite absence of information. There's lots of organisations out there that look at rare diseases, and they're umbrella organisations for rare diseases. None of them have heard of MVA, not surprisingly. So far, I've not managed to speak to anybody with MVA. I've not even spoken to a family who've had MVA. And I've been looking really hard now for nearly a year. That was the reason for starting it, that hopefully it's the beginning of a sort of chain reaction that because we've got the site, people will come to it. If people come to it, we can build more of a community. We build more of a community, we can build more of an awareness. And then it's a kind of upward spiral from there.
In a very rare disease, there may only be, less than 100 cases around the world, and if an organisation can become the sort of focus for those patients and a way to gather information, disseminate information, allow people to opt in or out of research, if that becomes an opportunity, then they can also be very useful in terms of the next steps, in terms of research.
So can we get lots of information? What are these children experiencing? What are the different features of the condition? How does that map to their genetic information and the genetic findings and other imaging and other findings? So putting that all together.
There is a patient cohort out there that will benefit from a solution or progress we're making in this field, undoubtedly.
The researchers in the lab sort of develop kind of new ways of studying disease, like they can build sort of little mini organs, like little hearts and little livers and things like that in the lab that we can test new drugs and new therapeutics on. So there's masses of advancement in kind of academia and research, particularly when we understand a genetic cause and we can kind of replicate that through these different models in the lab. And the idea is that what we want to do is we want to just try and find a treatment or therapy that works, either when someone has developed a condition or, as we discussed a little bit earlier, for prevention. And is there anything we can do before a cell becomes a cancer cell that might stop it from going down that pathway?
Paediatric conditions get very little funding compared to old age, like older onset conditions. And there's obviously political and financial reasons why that's the case. But at the end of the day, any family who's been told their child has a rare genetic condition will tell you the impact of that. And I think as a society, all of us would want to try and treat those children. But that takes time and money and research. And so we need to bang the drum to make sure that that's all going in the right direction. But if the whole conversation becomes around, we're going to look for every child. If it starts off 0.1%, if we get to 2% of children getting cures, if we can slowly build that up over the years, keeping that as our goal, I think will only drive things forward more quickly.
You never know, we may find a cure, but if we don't try, we will never find a cure. You can guarantee that. If we don't try, we won't find a cure. If we do try, we have a chance of finding a cure. And that's what I have to go to bed at night feeling that I've tried, that that we're trying to do something for George, even if it's very minor in terms of the improvements and the gains and the progress, but at least we're trying. If we don't try, we know we're never going to do anything about it, and that is unacceptable.
You